Well, Matt, welcome back to the show. It's always a pleasure, my friend. How's things?
Uh, Doing very well, Vinny. Glad to be back. I'm always honored to be on your show. As I have said many, many times, you were one of the first, or actually, you and Dan were the very first guests on my show. And I remember how nervous I was back back then having you guys on. You're like UAP royalty. So anyway, it's always good to see you. I've been a big fan of your show, since I got into the whole UAP topic. So anyway, yeah, glad to be back and nice to see you.
I appreciate that, man. And congratulations on your success. You're absolutely putting in the work and it's showing dividends. So really, really happy to see that. There's always so much going on. And I just thought it'd be great to get you back on and just get some of your thoughts because we haven't spoken since the end of, or towards the end of 2024. So there's obviously been some developments, let's say. But I'd like to start off by talking about we've got this new documentary, The Age of Disclosure, premiering at the South by Southwest Festival in Austin, Texas. And, we've had some early reviews in, a few mixed reviews, some negative, some a bit more positive. But, there's been rumors and inklings of what this is going to be all about for a good number of years now. And I just wondered what your thoughts are around the documentary and how it may differ from the sort of regular documentary that's been put out.
I haven't seen it. I'm looking forward to seeing it. It. My understanding is that what is different about it are the number of political figures that all go public in one singular film. So it's not like Gillibrand's in one film and Rubio's in another. So as I understand it, he was able to get a good number of these folks to comment about UAP. Now, since I haven't seen the show, I obviously have no idea what they say. I think having James Clapper on there, I think that is really really significant. I don't know what he said. But just the fact that you have a former CIA director in a documentary talking about UAP, I mean, I think that's pretty good thing there, and certainly promising. My hope is that this thing, when it comes out, of course it came out at they screened it at South by Southwest. I wasn't there for it, unfortunately, but my hope is that it will get some congressional interest. When this thing airs, I understand it's going to come out here towards the latter part of this month. But yeah, any good quality work is welcome. The more all ships. What is the saying Lou has? All ships rise with all ships rise with the tide, and the more great podcasts and documentaries and anything of that sort, media that the general public can consume that advocates for UAP transparency, I am all for.
Yeah, I mentioned it to Lou when I interviewed him a month or so ago, and he said, this is what they originally laid out in their five pillars of UAP engagement. It's kind of like the fifth pillar, which is engaging with the public, and what better way to do it than a documentary because it sort of spans or it gives access, let's say, to people outside of the community because it'll probably be on multiple platforms that people browse all the time, and so that made a lot of sense. But do you think there are other ways that this could have been done, or do you think that this is a good step?
I'm not sure. I don't know the filmmaker Dan Farah. I've never met him. I've known of him for quite some time, way before I got into the UAP topic. I mean, to me, it seemed like a launch at South by Southwest is pretty darn good. The thing that I would say was unfortunate were some of the reviews that were clearly by by folks that were just not really tracking the topic and didn't really understand the significance of who was in it. There was one review, I'm blanking on the guy's name from Variety, but the review was just complete garbage. And a fifth grader could have written something better, in my opinion. But this review, it didn't speak at all about who was in it and the significance of these lawmakers and the fact that you have a former CIA director and whatnot. So I think that kind of stuff you really can't control. People are gonna write what they're gonna write about it. So I'm not really sure that there would have been anything that Dan Farrar could have done differently. I still think it was a success. The fact that it premiered at South by Southwest, which of course has a huge viewing audience, and is really great exposure.
Yeah, I agree. I think, we've seen so many documentaries over the years. And I mean, me personally, I think there can never be enough. I think every opportunity that's out there to capture the audience or the publics, to bring them into this subject or to make them aware of it, especially in the you mentioned there with all the politicians and things like that. I think there's a good chance that there's a lot of members of the public who may not be aware that it's gotten to that point now with this subject where it is being taken so seriously. So I see that as nothing but a good thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I guess we have to look forward. I think there's been a lot of inklings and rumors about when it's going to be released. I know a lot of dates have been thrown around, but yeah, hopefully we get it before too long.
Hopefully soon. I think I saw March 18th, but I have no idea if that's confirmed or if it's a rumor. I'm not quite sure. But whenever it comes out, I'm definitely going to rent it.
Same. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm sure when we get that official release date, it's going to be plastered everywhere. So I'm certain that no one's going to miss that. So we'll see. Yeah, for sure. Well, I wanted to move on because, we've got a lot of organizations as well in this field. And the Soul Foundation, headed by Peter Scarfish and Dr. Gary Nolan, have just recently announced this new membership subscription, let's say, this monthly or annual thing, and it's caused a bit of a mixed reactions, let's say, within the community. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, because we're talking of some pretty big numbers here, starting from around, I think, $35, $350 a year, up to sort of $25,000 a year. So obviously a lot of people straight away, especially some of the naysayers, will just say this is pay to play disclosure. How do you see it?
I have absolutely zero problem with what the Soul Foundation is doing, what Dr. Gary Nolan is doing, what Dr. Peter Skafish is doing. The fact of the matter and the reality of the world is that things cost money. It doesn't matter if it's a nonprofit or a for-profit. I'm the director of strategy for the UAP Disclosure Fund, and I can tell you these organizations, they cost money to operate. You have uh, insurance, all of these kinds of miscellaneous costs, and I think it is unfair to throw shade on the Soul Foundation. As I understand it, and I haven't looked at these tiers, but they have everything. I think, as you mentioned, from a very uh, low entry point up to very very high. All of these organizations, they cost money to run. We do not live in a free world. I think for some reason, a lot of people sort of expect that if you are uh, pursuing or working on like a topic that you're passionate about, and that you put hundreds, if not thousands, of hours into, that there's this expectation that it should be done for free. And that is an unfair expectation in my view. I've known Dr. Gary Nolan for 3+ years now. Uh, Dr. Skafish, I've had on my show a couple of times. Don't know him really well, but have had really great conversations. And I can tell you that these guys are pursuing this for for disclosure, to move this topic forward. But just because I think I saw some comment that said, oh, it's two rich white guys asking for more money. I mean, that is just the most asinine uh, reply that I can possibly think of. It doesn't matter. Your time is valuable, and and it doesn't matter if you got $1 million or whatever. you know Time is money, And there is nothing wrong with covering your costs or or you know compensation. I have no idea if that's what it's for, but these organizations, they cost a lot of money. Research costs a lot of money. The just the material costs in these things. It's it's like everything in life. There is nothing for free. And in terms of the tier structure, again, the way the world works is people expect some kind of value for the money that they put in. So if you've got a $35 a year or month tier or whatever it is, and again, I don't know what these tiers are, and then you've got, we'll say, a $10,000 tier, and then we'll say you got a $20,000 tier. For those tiers, you need to be able to provide something of value to those people that are paying for those higher tiers. So if the $35 tier gets all of the same things that are offered at the $10,000 and $20,000 tier, if you're going and you're looking at what tier you're going to sign up for, and let's say you've got a lot of money, you're a millionaire or whatever, um, but at the end of the day, you're a businessman and you or a woman, and you want value for your money. If you look at three separate tiers and they all are giving you the exact same thing, you're gonna pick the cheaper tier, because it's like, well, why should I pay $20,000 a year if I can get the exact same thing and only pay 35 bucks a year? In my view, it's just completely ridiculous. Now, if if this were data from the government that our taxpayer dollars paid for the research, paid for the studies, paid for the sensors or whatever, and paid for the labor to create reports and collate data and all that, then that's a different story, because your tax, which is, we all should have access to this data that the government has been collecting for decades now. But when you have an organization like the Soul Foundation that is doing serious work, that they are doing this for the purpose of moving this forward, there is absolutely no reason why they should not be charging for those tiers, in my view.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think what the Soul Foundation have done here is that they've appealed to kind of everyone here. We have that $35 per month, which kind of would appeal maybe more to the average man or woman, let's say, right up to these, thousands and thousands of dollars, which would be more of an investor or a multimillionaire maybe. And the tiers do kind of represent the value. We've got the top tier offering, almost some meetings and influence, let's say, on some of the work that the Soul Foundation does. And I think ultimately as well is the people that say it's pay to play disclosure. Once this research is done, it doesn't just get released to the people in the membership, it gets released to the public. So all in all, everyone's a winner at the end of the day. I guess it's more of like the funding for that research to be done in the first instance. So again, I agree with you. I think it's nothing but a positive, and I wish Gary and Peter all of the best. And funnily enough, I think about 15 minutes before we recorded this interview, Gary had tweeted that they've had a very positive and strong reception to the memberships and everything. So that just goes to show.
Yeah, 100%. I 100% back the Soul Foundation. I back Gary Nolan, Peter Skafish. These guys, they're doing great work. They've assembled an incredible team at the Soul Foundation, and in my view, I think they should have probably done this, a long time ago. It takes money to operate in the world. Nothing is free. Period. The end.
Yeah, there we go. Well, let's move on, Matt, because one thing that seems to be still an ongoing conversation is this drone debacle. And you've done a very good job of covering this on your show. I've spoken to a few people in the early days of it, and then into the new year, I didn't as much. But I thought this would be a great opportunity to ask you, because obviously, towards the end of 2024, we had Trump putting out a pretty bold statement that seemed to indicate that he either knew what was going on or he was very much going to get to the bottom of it. And then, here we are with, at the start of the year, this FAA statement saying it's research drones. Sorry, White House statement saying that it's FAA approved research drones. What's going on?
I don't know. All I know is that the Trump administration had made all of these promises, and they haven't kept them. Is really the bottom line. Uh, there is no way that the folks that are in the administration are stupid enough to buy, in my opinion, that kind of explanation. So then it leads you to question, well, why are they being dishonest with the public? It is, we know these are not FAA drones, or FAA approved drones. Many of these reports matched the drone incidents that I did a significant amount of research into during the 2019-2020 wave in Nebraska. Of course, I had former Chief of Police Chris Grooms on our show to discuss the quote unquote drone incursions. I thought what was interesting too, during the course of that research, I spoke to several other law enforcement officials in the state of Nebraska, and their conversations were all off the record. They did not want to speak publicly about it for fear of ridicule and whatnot. But when you spoke to all of them, they all said these weren't normal drones. They all felt that it was something from somewhere else that was not man-made. It was universal, and these were all law enforcement officials that had first-hand encounters with these vehicles. I think in general, I mean, we know that the Biden administration was an abject failure when it came to UAP transparency, and an abject failure when it came to being honest with the American public about these drone incursions over our restricted airspace. And and I was being hopeful. Strictly based on what now President Trump had said when he was running for the election, that he was going to get to the bottom of it on day one. And I think it is just been so wildly disappointing. It was interesting, the Jeffrey Epstein files, and of course I haven't been tracking the Epstein, that whole tragedy of what he did to all of these folks. But I think it's kind of a sort of similar behavior by the Trump administration. Trump goes out there before, says, I'm going to release all the Epstein files, which, as far as I know, had nothing to do with national security. And then Pam Bondi goes out there and then releases the same stuff that Biden had released at the beginning of this thing, and she's touting it as, these are all new Epstein files and whatnot. It was the exact same stuff. And of course, the Trump administration brought in all of these right-wing podcasters, and they all leave the White House, the West Wing, holding up these binders with Jeffrey Epstein or whatever on it, and like this was something new, and it was all the same stuff. So it's kind of with the Trump administration, and we've seen this with previous administrations. It doesn't matter what party it is. It is this constant bait and switch. This just outright lying to the public that at some point it's just got to come to an end. It's with what the White House statement said. I'm blanking on the press secretary's name, but it was an absolute joke. It was an insult to every person that wears the uniform, every first responder, every local and state government official. It was a slap in the face to all of those people, and it's more of this kind of, they're basically just saying, oh, you know what you saw, it was all normal. Don't worry about it. But it's yeah, I was truly hoping that this administration would be a departure from the Biden administration in terms of transparency on drones, on UAP, all these other things, and it looks like Trump is going right along with, if you want to call it, the deep state or whatever. But it's a huge disappointment, and I maybe we'll all be surprised and they'll come out with something, but the indicators are not good in just in general, in my opinion. How the administration is operating is just a total shit show right now.
I have to agree, unfortunately. It did seem, or there was certainly some hope that when this new administration came in, that we might see a change for the positive in the way that these issues may be handled. I'm sure anyone realistically wasn't expecting everything to just come out straight away, but it certainly seems that it's not a great start after all, and that really puts the dampeners on any kind of transparency when it comes to UAP. But I mean, also as well, recently we've heard inklings that we may see the UAP Disclosure Act reintroduced for a third time as well. And I think third time round, I think expectations were certainly tempered before, but does it almost just seems pointless to a degree, really. I mean, what direction should we be looking at if we can't rely on the administration to do anything?
Well, I think a continuation of legislation that puts pressure on this topic. Of course, every year we've had some level of legislation that has gone into effect. What is it, over the past, like excuse me, like 4 or 5 years or whatever. So we should definitely continue to advocate for it. Just because you get knocked down in the fight, it doesn't mean you just give up and you walk away. You get yourself up, and you keep in the fight. And so I applaud this, that Senator Rounds and Senator Schumer are doing this now. What I would recommend to Senator Schumer and Senator Rounds is to remove any language related to eminent domain. I know, Colonel Karl Nell and I have had these discussions. He feels very, very strongly about it. But two times in a row, this legislation has not passed, and apparently one of the primary reasons were people like Travis Taylor and others that had a problem with it because of the eminent domain language in there. So my recommendation: it's better to get something on the books, rather than something. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of good. So in my view, they should remove that language, and then if they remove that language, then really there is no good argument from anyone, in my opinion, that this should not be codified into law. Travis and Brandon, they don't want the big daddy government coming to take whatever's buried in the mountain over at Skinwalker Ranch, and I can understand some of the legal arguments that it is a slippery slope, that the government could just claim eminent domain and take it. But we really got to get something on the books, and if that means bargaining away certain provisions in it, obviously we don't want to water the whole thing down, but that would be the one thing that I think you could give away that would not have a negative impact.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we focus on the independent review board that would sort of would I think was part of it those past 2 years. I think that would be a good step forward with regards to being able to release certainly more information on that's not in the public domain. So
Yeah, no. The key is if this were to pass, they need to make sure that on this review board that it's not it's not stuffed with people from Arrow. You don't want anybody from the DoD or the IC infiltrating this whole thing, because they'll just derail it. I don't think you can trust Arrow. They've Nothing they've done has shown that they are trustworthy at all. So if that happens, it's important, and I don't know if it's a mechanism of the language, but it's important that whoever goes in there is not just a shill for the CIA or the DOE or the DoD and NSA, as they're a stakeholder as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to see people from the scientific and academic communities would be great. I mean, look, even someone highly respected within the UFO community, or certainly someone that crosses over into the scientific or academic area as well. I think that would be helpful to navigate and direct what we think exists that can be released. I think would be hugely beneficial.
Absolutely. I'll be their I'll be their press secretary. I'll volunteer right now.
Well, listen, you mentioned previously there Karl Nell, and correct me if I'm wrong, did he not just announce that his departure from the UAP Disclosure Fund? And if so, could you give us any sort of clarity on why that may have happened?
Uh, to be honest, I don't know all of the details. He reached out to us and just said, "I've got some other things going on. I don't have the bandwidth to be able to serve on the board of directors and give it the attention that it needs." And it was completely amicable. I don't know what he's up to. I've had people say, "Well, where is he off to?" He didn't elaborate, but I respect that. It's like, the last thing you want is somebody on your board or your advisory board for an organization that just they do not have the time to put into it. It's better to say, what, I've got other new commitments, and for me to stay on the board would be doing the organization a disservice. So, Carl Nell, man, that guy is a true patriot. I've had lots of conversations with him. I have such a high respect for the man and what he has done for this country. And whatever he's off to, and again, he didn't share it. I know he's going to do a great job, and we certainly appreciate his contributions to UAP Disclosure Fund, because he did play a significant part, and we were very, very grateful.
Yeah, I appreciate that, absolutely, and I think, obviously the rumor mill just starts to go crazy as soon as that was made public, and, there's rumors of him just completely falling out of touch or just stepping away from this whole UAP subject or the disclosure process in general, which obviously there's no sign of that whatsoever. It's just like you said, there's obviously commitments that can't be met, then he respects the organization. So, no, I appreciate that 100%.
Yeah, and I hope he continues to contribute, be a part of this whole movement, if you want to call that. He has a very, very valuable part to play. I would suspect that a lot of folks were hoping that the administration would be proactive in the UAP issue in terms of having a UAP czar or any sort of administrative effort to really tackle this. I'm sure all of those guys, Lou, Dave, Karl, and lots of other folks were really hopeful that that was going to be the case. I think all of us were very hopeful. Certainly, all of the signals that we had been receiving from people that were talking to the Trump transition team and whatnot, it was looking very, very good. And just the fact that Don Jr., you've got the president's son advocating for it. He did on his podcast. I mean, it was looking really, really good. And I think it came it came as a surprise to all of us. What has transpired. This Trump administration, they between Donald and Premier Elon Musk, they're more interested in firing people in the government, even people from the National Nuclear Security Agency, rather than hiring people on to tackle important national security issues such as UAP. It's a true disappointment.
I mean, it's funny with Elon Musk, isn't it? I mean, Ross Coulthart said the other day that he'd been hearing from sources that Elon has been fully briefed on legacy programs as well. And I mean, he certainly has hasn't been quiet about it when speaking on podcasts such as Joe Rogan, that he kind of poo-poos the subject completely. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that might be the case?
Yeah, I've heard for quite some while from very reliable sources that he's fully read in, as are many of his top executives that are part of SpaceX. In terms of why he would say what he has said about it. I mean, he says a lot of crazy stuff, so it's really kind of hard to nail down. But it's like if uh, the guy has a lot of billions of dollars worth of defense contracts, and if he was fully read into the legacy crash retrieval program, he absolutely signed an NDA, and he absolutely understands the consequences for violating that NDA, uh, and certainly understands that were he to violate that NDA, although it's different now, we're in a different world with this new administration. But I would say, before uh, the inauguration, I would say that he would probably be concerned that if he did reveal something that crossed the red line in his NDA, he would be at risk of losing all of these defense contracts with the DoD, which would explain why he says what he says. Do I know it for a fact? No, but I have been I had been told a that it was kind of like the the worst kept secret in SpaceX about the CR program. So and it's well over a year. I've been told the same thing Ross was told.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it, if he's been, because of all of that, if he's had access or will gain access to the materials, because I'm sure for someone with that kind of money and the work he does, would certainly be interested in acquiring that technology.
Well, and if you think about it too, it's like uh, he his or SpaceX, Tesla, these at least those two businesses have been very successful, very groundbreaking. Just if you look at it from the SpaceX point of view, so if I were the United States government and I were having no luck with Northrop Grumman making any progress other than harassing whistleblowers, I would go and I would certainly go to Elon and SpaceX because they have had a good track record of really kind of thinking out of the box. So it would make complete sense that they would any off-world materials. I would not be surprised at all if some of that was being studied at SpaceX with Elon's knowledge.
I suppose as well, on top of all that, you think about Starlink and the amount of satellites and things that Elon has in space. It's almost inevitable that they'll capture or see something.
Trust me, he knows.
Wow. Well, listen, I couldn't speak with you without touching upon the whole Jake Barber story. We don't have to spend an awful lot of time on it, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on Jake Barber, Skywatcher, and their plans, but also the introduction of psionics, because I've come from a very nuts and bolts background, but the way that the years and the months have been going in this subject, I'm being pulled out to the new sides of this subject where it goes into these whole new realms, and the psionic thing is fascinating to me. So, give me your thoughts on that from initially finding out about it, whether before or when it happened, and then how it's looking for you.
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly elements that were a surprise. I knew about Jake before he went public, and uh, the the people that I had spoken with about him uh, vouched for him 100%. I was told he was absolutely the real deal. The people that I had those conversations with, uh, you would certainly value their opinion and take it to the bank. So from the very beginning, I was told he's legitimate. He is who he says he is. He's done what he's said he has done. There was zero doubt about his claims. So so that was kind of like I knew sort of like the top level, and but the psionics part I was not expecting. That was a surprise. Now, having said that, I've a lot of these same folks that vouched for Jake. I have heard them talk about psionics. I don't think using that exact term, but that this was part of the whole thing, the whole UAP thing. So while I was a bit surprised about it, because I'm a nuts and bolts, have always been a nuts and bolts person as well, it completely made sense. And again. Um, the amount of people that vouched for him, I had zero doubt that he was not being truthful. So I 100% believe it. It makes sense. I know in my own experience, when I uh, prior to the orb showing up above our home, we had weird paranormal stuff in the house, and and that continued for some period of time. So I've always known there's some really strange stuff that goes along with it, that goes beyond the nuts and bolts stuff. Having experienced it multiple times myself, uh, I and none of it surprises me that there is some kind of connection. And as I mentioned publicly, prior to really pursuing this topic from a media perspective, I'd never had absolutely anything happen my entire adult life, or as a child, that I'm aware of. And really, the only thing that changed was me mentally engaging this topic, and then poof, it all started to happen. So I'd always wondered, well, why now and why me? And the only reason I could figure out was there was some kind of mental connection, or Robert Hastings had suggested maybe it was hitchhiker effect, because he and I had began communicating right around the time all of that occurred. So there's just, it's weird stuff that we don't understand. I have no idea how it works. I have no idea how it's connected, but it doesn't. What Jake Barber has stated, to me, it completely makes sense. And the other thing in terms of his not reliability, I can't think of the right word, but in terms of the validity of his claims, the thing to keep in mind too is you had all these other folks that vouched for him, that came on Ross's special, and none of those guys are just going to back somebody like that up unless they have firsthand experience with it themselves. And one of the things that I've noticed is a feature of all of these former special operators is they don't candy coat, they don't exaggerate. What they say, what the truth is, whatever that is. And so yeah, I have zero doubt in my mind about the validity of anything that he's claimed. And and my hat is off to what they are doing with this whole Skywatcher project. As I mentioned earlier, this venerable shit show we're seeing out of the Trump administration. I just don't. I am not confident in anything of significance being delivered by the administration. I think that for 80, 90 years or whatever, the DOD and the IC have had a very long time to spread this whole thing out across multiple nodes of government, and there's huge amount of market cap involved. I mean, all of these different things that are the fingers in the national security pie, and to rely on the government to be truthful about this. I'm just no longer confident in that taking place. So, with that said, it is important that we have private organizations work to get this stuff out, to gather real scientific data, real sensor data that is not going to be classified. So when you have organizations like the Soul Foundation or Skywatcher or anyone else, the Tedesco brothers have just out of their own pockets have done amazing work in this sort of private effort to be able to generate verifiable data that can be given to the public that is scientifically backed is crucial to moving this thing forward. Because we are never ever. I mean, never say never, but 99.999% chance we are not going to ever see censored data from the government on UAP, short of what was released when Christopher Mellon and Lou Elizondo were able to get those 3 videos out. Any footage that is UAP related is automatically classified. And it's actually, they've thrown another, I can't talk about it, but they've thrown another control on top of it. So trust me, nothing is going to come out of the government in terms of censor data, scientific data. It'll stay classified. They use it as an excuse. We've seen time and time again gun camera footage from F-35s in chasing something that NORAD was flagging. But the DoD will continue to hide behind this overclassification, and like I said, they've added another layer of classification to this that was just going to keep it buried. So what Jake Barber and his team are doing, what the Soul Foundation is doing, what the Tedesco brothers and others are doing, that is a direction that we need to give them our full throttled support. We need to give them our full throttled financial support, i.e., the Soul Foundation or any of these organizations that are asking for contributions to fund their efforts. We need to support these organizations in every way that we can, because at the end of the day, that is our best shot of getting data that can be given to the public that is irrefutable proof that all of this has been going on. We cannot rely on the government or the Trump administration to do it.
I'm on completely the same page with you, but one thing I will add to that, and I'm not going to speak on behalf of yourself, but what I can see happening is that because there seems to be more and more decline and following towards the kind of government aspect of disclosure, that the naysayers will say, well, that failed. They're now just flip-flopping onto the next thing to kind of stay relevant. And what I'll say to that is that I've always been open to all. What I will say is I've always been open to disclosure coming from anywhere.
Of course,
and I've focused maybe at certain times or for a few months at a time on, let's say, the government aspect of disclosure, but then other times spoken to experiences and that. So I guess I'm saying this on behalf of or pointing this at the naysayers to say that these aren't excuses. This is just acceptance that we're now in a and lucky to be in a place where we have organizations and independent researchers such as the Tedesco brothers coming forward with a really good shot at giving us, the general public, something to work with, something to push this subject forward. So I felt like I had to say that.
No, I am in complete agreement with that, which is why I said earlier, we need to support continued legislative efforts to put laws on the books. If this UAP Disclosure Act 3.0 happens, we need to support it a full throttle. My point is that I think you're saying the exact same thing. You have to recalibrate. So if all indicators are that we are not going to get any level of transparency out of the Trump administration, and it's just a continuation of what was coming out of the Biden administration, which was all BS, then you recalibrate. It doesn't mean that you give up, and of course wherever this comes from is welcome, but to that you're always going to hear this from the debunkers. These folks that have way too much time on their hands, spending it on something that they don't believe in, which is highly suspicious, of course. But it's yeah, so it's like we all thought, and everything that we were hearing from multiple sources, that the Trump administration was going to be singing a different tune compared to the Biden administration and previous administrations. And when you hear that from multiple sources, when you've got the son of the president advocating for it, and then it doesn't turn out that it's going to be more of the same, then you recalibrate. But even I would say, even let's say that the White House uh, did indicate that they were going to be or had taken action to be transparent on this, I would still 100% back the private efforts of Skywatcher, of Soul Foundation, of UAP Disclosure Fund, and others. It needs to be a all hands on deck approach the problem from many different vectors. It can't just be from one one way, and you can't just uh, bank on it coming from one thing, even though the indicators may be good that the administration is going to be transparent or whatever. You gotta spread the risk out, and you have to you have to adjust.
100%. And you never know. We know that George and Jeremy are always cooking up something, so
Those guys
they've
always
always
are,
got a
yeah.
little something coming out of left field. But no, no. In all seriousness, that is what I was getting at. Recalibrate is the perfect word, and so yeah. And I'm sure. Again, I can't speak for anyone else, but anybody that's watching this, if you agree as well, please just let us know in the comments and stuff, because I think it makes perfect sense to be open to different avenues, and that's what this subject's been like for 80 plus years. We've been through these roller coasters to some degree previously, and Matt, like Matt says there, like you say, Matt, I won't quit because something doesn't work in one direction. It's not like, oh well, we tried. No,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
David Grush was kind of like the sort of recent pinnacle of all of this, and that is a hard act to follow. Before that, you had Lou and Chris Mellon in the 2017 New York Times article, and there was a long period of time before David Grush came out. So I know everyone, including myself, is always very impatient. We want the next big whistleblower to come out and the next big development. But the fact of the matter is historically, uh, these these things have always happened, and I can certainly understand everyone's frustration. It's like this carrot that is being held out in front of you, or like Lucy and Charlie Brown with the football. It has always been that way, and it's just an unfortunate uh, an unfortunate reality of it. But it's if you're going to be at the gambling table in Las Vegas playing whatever game, you're not always going to walk out with big money. It's just, you're going to have these down periods, but you keep playing the game, and you continue to support organizations like Soul Foundation, like Skywatcher, like UAP Disclosure Fund, and these others, Americans for Safe Aerospace. Support these organizations because they are all fighting the same fight, and I'm sure all of them have these similar frustrations. So I think probably everyone organizationally is going through a recalibration process. That okay, this what Trump promised ended up being a bag of BS. So, okay, how are we going to reattack this problem? Are we going to focus on congressional legislation? Are we going to focus on private efforts? You have to you recalibrate, you readjust, and you figure out the next line of attack.
and I'm sure that there is still work being done behind the scenes on trying to keep that congressional push happening. I mean, it's been going on nonstop for years now. We just don't see it in the public. So what I do is I understand the frustrations that I see all across social media. But what I can't get on board with is people that say, it's time to put up or shut up because you're just repeating the same thing over and over again. And see, I think that the more that we keep talking about this subject, the more it just keeps it relevant. It keeps it, it keeps bringing new people in. The minute we stop talking about this is almost the same as giving up in my eyes. So
Absolutely.
as much as I understand the frustration for people out there that start to get offensive, let's say, towards individuals that are still talking about the subject, that's when maybe they need to take a break rather than the people actually doing the talking.
Yeah, I completely agree. If I mean, I really I tend to focus on the debunkers because I don't think that their motivations are altruistic, but they should just get out. Mick West, go make another video game. If this ended up being a nothing burger to you, fine, go do another video game or do some tarot card reading or whatever, and stop putting your effort into this. I think uh, the people that have been advocating for the truth, and the thing that I have always said is the naysayers, the all of these folks that consistently put out disinformation or misrepresent the truth. At the end of the day, what they want is for all of us to stop talking about this. What they want is for all of us to stop asking questions. What they want is for legislators to stop advocating for legislation. I remember with the last UAP Disclosure Act, I asked Mick West directly on Twitter. It's like, are you supporting this legislation that will finally answer these questions about UAP, whether it's true or not? And he gave some kind of BS answer. But it's clear, when you have all these individuals that do not support legislation, that are not supportive of efforts, yet they spend all of their time uh, uh, crapping on it. It's pretty obvious these guys, they're up to something. But the minute we all give up, the minute we stop asking questions, the minute that Congress thinks that this is not a national security issue and that their constituents are not interested in it, then it will go away. So it is important that we all stay curious. We all demand the truth. We all demand scientific data that will prove all of this beyond a shadow of a doubt. To stop talking about it or stop or to give up on it. That's what all these debunkers and others they want, and the antibodies that have worked behind the scenes to throw a wet blanket on this fire. They want you to stop asking questions. They want Congress to stop asking questions, and so that it'll all go away.
Yeah. And I think in a similar vein as well, from someone who's been in this community now for a while, I've found that I often get accused of living in an echo chamber, which is far from the truth. I have many conversations on a regular basis with people on the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to this subject. They don't believe in it, but the key important thing for me is cordial conversation and respectful disagreements. You see, I think that's what people miss sometimes, is that they think it's like we're not willing to listen to anybody else. Far from it. What I don't like is the minute when it becomes attacking or it becomes disrespectful, then I will stop listening.
Yeah, it's and there is we should all be skeptical. We should all not accept things at face value. We should all be asking questions. Skepticism is good. Where I diverge from that is are debunkers. I think they're really some people kind of think it's the same bucket, but in my view, it's two totally different things. Skepticism is being open to any outcome whether it's positive or negative in terms of maybe your sort of predisposition. In other words, you know what, if I were if it somebody came to me and offered me unequivocal proof that UAP are not real, or it's swamp gas or seagulls or whatever, I'd be fine. Okay, great. I can move on. But when when you come from a place where you've already made the decision, and you ignore or manipulate or misrepresent data such that you twist it in a way that these debunkers do to support their side. That's not getting at the truth. That's pushing a point of view. And it's like with Mick, or they'll say, oh, it could be space aliens, but let's use that pejorative, but they're really not open to it. I've met skeptics that are very open to the possibility, and they would be open to being proven wrong about this existing. But when you have folks that twist the data or ignore data or hyper focus on one little thing and use that as a communications tactic to throw out the rest of the evidence, then they're not being honest brokers.
Exactly, and that's the thing. I've always said as well, I'd be happy to be proven wrong, that this was all completely a psychological operation, and we've had the wool pulled over our eyes for 80 plus years. I'll hold my hands up. I've had a great time doing what I'm doing, and I'll take away lifelong friends from that and lots of benefits. I'm happy with that. But then when I look at it from the other angle, the actual truth about what NHI may well represent, the more time goes on, the more and more that I think that if we do find out the truth, that it'll be something so far out and almost hard to conceive of, that the whole extraterrestrial thing is just completely base level. And this is something that is really, really out there. I think that's what we're dealing with.
I 100% feel the same way, Vinny.
There we go. Well, feel like I got a lot off my chest in there. There's been some rants and stuff, but I really appreciate that, Matt. I really appreciate you joining me, and I will make sure that all your links are in the description of this video. And I urge anybody, if they're crazy enough to not already follow your work, to please go and support Matt and the Good Trouble Show. Matt, thank you so much, brother. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and keep up the great work. Love your show, and always happy to chat. Enjoy our conversations.
Thank you so much, and to everyone watching, as always, thank you so much.